This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Hey guys, I'm Si. It's Sunday. It's fight night here on A.C.E Podcast Nation. Welcome to the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. We are episode number 99, which is one away from a century. And we'll be talking a huge weekend of MMA and boxing. And we're joined by another guest from the world of combat sports. And of course, we'll be talking UFC 268 from last night, Bellator from Friday, and Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant when we're joined by Ben Doughty later on. But we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as always. And of course, as you all know by now, A.C.E Podcast Nation, you're home to many great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts, and more. So please do give us a follow on social media, subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the bell for notifications. And if you prefer your podcast in audio form, then we are now part of the Sports Social Podcast Network, the UK's first dedicated sports podcast network. You can find the next show that you'll love on the Sports Social Podcast Network. You can check them out at Sports Social, sport-social, should I say, .co.uk. You'll find all the content produced by us on various subjects and shows and series, as well as they do shows like Daily Premier League and all sorts of stuff. But focus on the A.C.E Podcast Nation stuff is what I say. But joining me, as ever, first and foremost, is former Cage Warriors champion and pioneer of British MMA. It is Mr. Daniel Batten. How are you, my friend?
Hi, son, listeners. Yeah, I'm pretty good. And yeah, it's been a good weekend of fights, hasn't it? Finishes galore.
Interesting, mate. It's really a very interesting weekend. It didn't go very well for the Irish on Friday, but it went a lot better for the Irish last night on the UFC. And of course, Canelo Alvarez proving once again that he is the king, as it were, of boxing. It was a quite phenomenal performance by him. But before we get to all that, we are joined by professional MMA fighter and coach live from India. It is Mr. Richard Mearns. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you. Been a chilling day today, Sunday. It's like day off work. So I've mostly been sleeping during the day. It's been first week teaching, like gym is properly open. So this week was quite tiring because there's so many adjustments, and it's like training in like 28-degree heat. And yeah, so but very good.
It's a hard life. We're just getting to the point where we've got to make sure the radiators are all working, and you've got to get used to the heat. But yeah, I mean, let's start there. Obviously, Richard, like the last time you came on the show, I think you came on last time as a guest, but obviously you filled in for Danny a couple of times as well. You've had a big move, as it were. So you were previously, coaching with Danny and and working with Danny, and you made a move not round the corner. So, like, tell the listeners and viewers what's been happening and how it came about and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, I've been coaching in Milton Keynes for about the last two and a half years, and then training like every other day with Danny at BST. I was training out of a couple places in Milton Keynes, Exercise for Less and Combat Principle. And it was a huge experience for me. Like, when I moved into the coaching, like, that's where I start growing a whole nother level, if you know what I mean. Like, because I think as a coach, you gotta observe so much more. And when I was a student, I was working full time. When I first was training, it was college, and I was working 2 jobs, and then go to full time work. And then I sometimes, I turn up to class and I'm autopilot in the class. Kind of can't wait just to get rolling because I'm exhausted in that. And then when you go to coaching, you got to think, oh shit, how much information have I actually digested? If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's when I start really learning, if you know what I mean, because I have to explain. Because you can be an exceptional professional fighter. Doesn't mean you're a good coach and you're able to teach, because you drill these techniques so much so that it becomes a seed planted in the subconscious mind when you perform these techniques, to the point where you don't really, just like tying your shoelaces, you just do it. You do it without thinking. And I think a lot of professional athletes, they do the movements without thinking because they've just done it a million times and someone's taught them through it. And then as a coach, I was just like, oh, I have to break down these techniques now and teach to other people. So I really got to make sure I'm really listening. And then I think when I started coaching, I started paying more closer attention in class, from Danny's class. So yeah, it was a huge step in my personal progression, like as a martial artist, not just a fighter. As a martial artist, I see martial arts as not just the fight business. Martial arts is like a philosophy and a way of life. So yeah, it's a huge step for me. And then I loved being a coach because I found like investing in people to be very rewarding. And then it went up a whole nother level during the lockdown, when we were sort of forced to stay at home, forced to can't do this, can't do that, couldn't even train. And I thought, fuck this, I'm not going to have my life dictated to. And I had a lot of parents messaging me saying, oh, please, can you just hold pads for my kids? They need to do something. And I was just like, yep, I'm about. And then I started during the lockdown getting lots of clients because I filled a gap in the market that presented itself. And so I was just teaching outdoors, teaching in the park throughout the winter and summer. And then I quit my cushy little office job, become a labourer. And then I was loving the roofing game. I actually really liked it. Everything I ate tasted so good because I was working so hard all the time. But it was taken away from my training. And then I thought, hang on a sec, like with this roofing wage, what I get in 10 hours, I get in 3 hours teaching.
Yeah.
So then I thought, oh fuck, let's take another gamble here. Let's quit the roofing, like full-time teaching. And then yeah, it was a bit shaky. I knew about this opportunity to teach in India way back in March, and I kept it quiet because so many, like I was supposed to fight in Florida in 2020, which got cancelled because of COVID. And then when the opportunity to teach at the new A.K.A Academy in India come about, I kind of just kept it quiet because I thought, oh, it's a long way away, yeah. They wanted me out in March, and then it got postponed because of a cyclone to July. So then I thought, okay, so I'm still sort of keeping it quiet. And then in July, it gets pushed back again to sort of August because of the Indian lockdown. And then it gets pushed back again to late September. So I'm just chilling at this point, thinking, mate, I'll get to India when I get to India. It will happen at some point. And then the boss man just messages me and says, bro, your flight's booked for Monday. I'm like, fuck. Like, yeah, let's just uproot my life. Let's get this sorted in a week. Because like I knew about this for a whole year, but because of the COVID and all these problems that kept occurring, I kind of just sort of like took it easy, carried on teaching on my one-to-ones and that. And I thought it will happen when it will happen. But then I was chilling, and then I was just like, you got a week to go. I was like, fuck. And then in the run-up to this, like, mad shit happened. Like, I was supposed to fight, then I got COVID. Getting over that was, like, an issue. Injuries, like, with my arm. And then finally I'm here, and it's actually going very great. So, yeah, the opportunity come about because I met the CEO of the Mandarin Beach branch when I was training in Thailand. That was 6 years ago. So he knows that I'm an excellent standard from 6 years back. So, of course, my levels kept growing over them 6 years. I sent him, when I found out he was opening this gym, I sent him a quick message, and he said, well, send me a resume. I sent a bio, footage of my fights showing my grappling pedigree and my striking pedigree, explanation of my coaching experience, and then that goes to Javier and Mike Swick for approval. They say yes, and then now here I am. So yeah, it's excellent. It's been madness since getting out here. Lots of things to adjust to, but I'm loving it, really loving it, and it's hard work though. This is not the UK. This is India. Things aren't like, for example, you'll see we've got the tryouts. We're going to be published soon, and like a fight show in the UK, it's like, you know, you've got cut men, you've got cornermen, you've got MC, you've got referees, you've got judges. These things were not in place. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, and it's just exciting. I'm really happy to be here. Like, India is like an open market. The MMA is coming up here, and I'm glad to be here at just the right time. And we've got some excellent athletes training in the gym right now. I've been teaching all week. They were successful in the tryouts, and I've been training with them this week, and they're super dedicated. And I'm like, holy crap, we've got a proper fight team, like proper. Most amateurs, there's a couple professionals, but I've been wrestling with them all week. I've been rolling with them all week, and I'm like, wow, they're really talented, and I'm excited to take them to another level. And they've got proper. I mean, they're living together, so like it's a proper team. You know, that's what I'm doing. But yeah,
I think
a lot going on.
It sounds like a crazy busy time for you, mate. And obviously, there's a lot of adjusting to do. And it sounds like, even though you knew it was coming, it came about very quickly in terms of the move and stuff. What, like, obviously, you're a twin as well. And, like, how difficult a decision was it to make that decision to move away from your brother Tom to change jobs? But like, he's everything, you know, it's a big thing. And
I come to the other side of the planet to get away from him. You know,
I did think so. I thought you was going to say he was a twat, but he's a twin.
He is a little bit. No, dude. Yeah, no. It's nice for space between us, Si.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. It just is what it is. Like, I'm very close to my brother, but you know, you got to follow your own things. And I'd say the last few years, you know, it's been difficult. Mine and Tom's sort of journey through the MMA scene. It's been major, like, bumps in the road for the last 4 years. Where was I going with this? And then, yeah, you know, it's interesting. Tom had his fight the other day, and it was weird not being in his corner, which, you know, I've been in his corner for every professional fight. and for the majority of his amateur fights towards the end of his amateur career. So yeah, that was the first time in many years that I'm just a spectator. You know, even when you're in the corner, you're pretty powerless anyway. But I like to be there. So that was a new experience, just watching Tom fight online. I knew he was going to do it, but man, it was nerve wracking because I know how much that win meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hate saying like, oh, this win means so much to Tom. Man, every time that guy fights, it's like sensational. It's world class. People aren't quite understanding this because they look at stamps and stickers on records and stuff. But when you look at the performance, he is the absolute world class standard. There's no denying that. Somewhat bit of a Frankie Edgar. So I hear he's got another fight coming up in the featherweight division. So, you know, I know people have been asking him to make this adjustment for a while now. So it's exciting. But, you know, I still think it was an absolute killer lightweight. But, you know, there comes the size matters, okay? And in a close decision, when one guy's wearing the marks from his face, I'm just going to go with that, you know?
Yeah.
It's been interesting, but now I'm not even missing Tom at all, to be honest.
It's good. You say that, mate, but like you've spent your whole life like together, haven't you? And being close and since kids, it's going to be weird, if not a bit, you know, strange or whatever. But like Danny, like for you, mate, like just on Tom very quickly, like every time he goes to fight, he leaves it all on the all in the cage. You'd never see him do kind of one of those fights where you come out thinking, oh, see if he had just pulled the trigger there, or he had just pushed on, or like it's usually one way or the other he's coming out covered in blood and have given 120%. And I think he has been unlucky as well. I think off the top of my head, there's at least 2 fights which he was lost on a decision, which I think probably he won, which is obviously, you know, it's part and parcel of the game, of course, but it can get, you know, it's going to be frustrating, isn't it? If when you lose a couple of those ones that you feel like you've won, I would imagine it plays on your mind a little bit because you're like, oh, it's people that are just against me. Like, come on, I won that clearly, and it's going to be frustrating, isn't it?
There's been some, really difficult times, and I think for the complexity of his personal life with, you know, working physical jobs, he decided to go lightweight, which was totally against what I wanted for him. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we all discussed it together, including Richard.
Richard was just referring to it there in the week who wanted him to go to featherweight. It was you.
Yeah. I wanted him to stay featherweight. You know, I didn't want him to go lightweight, but, you know, I went with it for a little bit. You know, not the results were coming in, you know, albeit they were very, very close. And sometimes, you know, could argue that perhaps Tom should have got the nod like he mentioned. But maybe we're coming from biased perspective when we're watching these fights. But nevertheless, fighting at lightweight, the matches were always close. And you're right, Tom is tenacious enough to leave absolutely everything in the cage. But unfortunately, he's leaving half his blood in there as well. You know, he marks up easy, he cuts in that weight. They bang hard up at that lightweight division. They really bang hard. Not saying featherweights or below can't. But when you are naturally a featherweight moving up to lightweight, you know, it can be more consequential to your face. And so, you know, me and Tom had quite a debate after his fight, you know, a few days after when he come back training that following week. And, you know, he tried to or hoped that I'd forget that he'd promised he would go to featherweight and give it a go if he won this belt. So I reminded him and I said, look, you shook on that, Tom. So we had a big old debate. And, you know, I just said, look, you got this belt and that's at lightweight. So you can go at lightweight to defend that. I don't expect you not to defend your belt, but let's progress your career at featherweight. At the end of the line, the bottom line of it was, I said, where do you want your career going? What's your goal? He said, I want to get UFC and fight, you know. And I said, well, what weight do you hope to do that? And he said, featherweight. I said, well, there's no point building up or trying to build up a lightweight record when you're trying to get recognized on the featherweight record, you know, on the featherweight scene. So I said, let's get back to one then. At the end of the day, all these fights have been close, but I don't think they would have been if they was done at featherweight. If you think about Tom's results at featherweight, he's a stopper. He'll submit you, he'll ground and pound TKO you, or he'll knock you the hell out. You know, he's a powerful featherweight. So I'm really happy he's going back down to that weight. You know, let's start getting some trajectory. He won a grappling tournament, didn't he, before he won that belt? And I think both these victories have done wonders for his confidence, wonders for his belief in himself. And I think collectively now as a team and, you know, Tom Mearns as a fighting product, we're on the right tracks at featherweight. And yeah, let's move onwards and upwards. You know, it's a case of not looking back. What's happened has been great character building for him. It's been good experiences. And let's just push forward. It's going to be great.
Indeed, mate. Richard, what do you think has been the hardest adjustment since moving out to India for you? For someone, had you ever lived outside of like your sort of familial area? Like, had you always lived close to like your parents, your brother, everything like that?
Milton Keynes, but I did spend 3 months living in Thailand and training out there. So this is actually where this opportunity began. That's where I met my boss. And I believe it set me up for that, because in Thailand you commute to anywhere is on a moped. The roads are pretty crazy out there, and you kind of do, and it's every man for himself. And man, driving in India is a whole nother ball game, because you're swerving cows, swerving dogs. Man, yeah. I tell you, one of the hardest adjustments is running. Right, so I love to jog. I go for a jog every week. I used to sometimes do it daily. And then when I was doing it more weekly, my average jog would be like 8 miles. So I tried going for a jog out here, but there's street dogs everywhere. Like, they're actually pretty lovely, and you get to know certain dogs, and there's just dogs everywhere. But you cannot, for that reason, you just can't go for a jog. So I went for a jog on the beach, lovely, beautiful. Put my shoes on and started jogging back to the apartment where I was staying. Turn a corner, and this massive dog was just come jumping out at me. I was like, fuck. And I got, so I take my headphones out, and then that one dog had alerted every other dog down this 100-meter stretch of road. Fuck.
So basically, Rich, you went out for a jog and ended up going out for a sprint.
Yeah, just sprinted away from dogs.
The thing, like, so I had sand in my shoes as well, because I've been on boots. So then I thought, and then the dog made me second guess myself. Like, was I going in the right direction back to the apartment? Anyway, this dog turned out to be like a whole hour longer than it should have been. And then I'm come back to the apartment hobbling, because the sand has caused major blisters in my thing. So yeah, so
you know what?
That's an annoying thing. I found the only place where I can jog is on the beach, which is pretty decent. But where I'm living now, the beach is like 15 minutes away. So I'm trying to figure out where my running fits into my schedule, because I'm teaching like 3 times a day technically, because we got like a fighters class, which is around about lunchtime. So I got to fit the jogging back into my. I need that for my
Just have to invest into some doggy shoes. Just throw them as you run.
I don't know, like maybe like one of them suits, you know, them big suits that the police wear.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Just get one of those, but you'd be running around like the Michelin Man, like rocking back and forth.
And the other,
oh, dear.
For me, this is no hard adjustment, because I love food, man. I just love food. Like, it's my second passion is food, MMA then food. So I'm loving all the food. I'm eating a lot of like the roti, curry and all that. I found though, it was making my body a bit sore when training. So yeah, it was one thing, like finding like the most like nutritious stuff to train in, because I was just eating a lot of like just curry basically, and I love it. But I'm gonna have to sort of look at more like cleaner foods. I found some good places now, as I'm getting a bit more streetwise around here, like better places to eat. And the fighters were even asking me the same sort of thing, saying, "Oh, coach, where can we? We're struggling for food a little bit. They're living together, majority of them, and they've got one guy who does the cooking there. But you got to the Goa is very different from the rest of India. It's completely different from what I understand. And these athletes are from like Delhi, from the mountain sort of regions all over the country. So, and they're telling me that Goa is a very different sort of place. So they're making adjustments as well, and they found that their body was a bit sore from food. Because I eat really clean back home, and I've not been eating as clean here, but now I'm getting there. So that was one adjustment, and then when we did the fighter tryouts, I moved into the current apartment, place where I'm staying, and it was so hot in my room. It was baking. There's aircon in here, but not in my room, and it was just so hot, and I was so knackered. My girlfriend got sick when we was doing the tryouts, and I was just like, I've got to give these athletes, there's like a whole bunch of athletes who are coming here hoping to change their lives, so I've got to give them all 100%. But my girlfriend's sick at the time, so between each class, I'm whipping back to make sure she's all right, and then back to the class, and then meanwhile, I'm not getting much sleep because it's so hot in my room, but I've got the hang of that now. I'm kind of adjusting to the heat. So it's a lot of adjustments, if you know what I mean. It's not a holiday. But
Rich, to be honest with you, mate, I'm assuming like running, training in 28 degrees heat, you might have a problem with things like chafing. And what I would recommend for that is Manscaped toner, ball toner, and also ball deodorant helps with the anti-chafing. And you can use the code FIGHTSHOW to get 20% off there with free shipping. That's FIGHTSHOW with the code FIGHTSHOW for 20% off, and you can get free shipping anywhere in the world. And I have to say, by the way, that stuff which I just recommended, mate, I don't recommend that lightly. I used that the other day for the first time ever. I'm 40 next week. Never used like these products. I've never heard of them, and they were life-changing, mate. Life-changing. Never experienced anything like it in my life.
Yeah,
unbelievable. But anyway, you carry on.
For no little nicks when you look.
No, nothing, mate. It was pretty unbelievable. Top quality stuff. Unbelievable.
I have to get one.
Yeah, 20% off, mate. The code is FIGHTSHOW. There we go.
Got it.
And all that heat, trust me, you don't want too much hair all around you. So you should be getting rid of that beard as well. What's going on with that?
I think, remember
no razors out there.
Remember last time I was on this podcast, Danny, you was having fun of my crop circles. Crop circles in my face.
Oh, yeah, they're gone. Oh, that's why you're growing it, because you can again now.
What I've done
it's all come back.
I just combed it right over.
Stuff. Excuse me. But it has got to be difficult, like training in that heat. That's like a whole different ball game, isn't it? To over here, where it's even at the hottest days, it's not really that hot, is it?
As long as you get the water in, so you've got to go to the pharmacy, get the electrolytes, because you can't just drink water, because you can drink a lot of water and still be dehydrated, because the more you drink, you can start diluting these salts in your body. So just got to get the hydration. And to be honest, I've managed it all right, but it's like I'm a bit of an animal. Do you know what I mean? Like I can do these things. And it's this week was hard work. My body was hurting. But this was the first week teaching, so I'm trying to find my flow state, if you know what I mean. Because I can teach and then chill on the resort. I can teach, read my book. Where I'm staying is about 15 to 20 minutes away from the resort. So I was thinking, do I pack for the whole day and then stay at the resort all day? Then I've got to get food. My girlfriend's got to eat as well. So I'm just trying to find like a flow. But for me, I've been able to do the training. My body was hurting, I found, because sometimes I'm eating like not the cleanest food. But to be honest, that was the first week. I'm feeling good now. And where we're at, we've got like the amenities, if you know what I mean. There's massage therapists on site. There's a ice bath, which is going to be functioning soon. The beach is literally next to the gym, so I can go swim. So I can get my relaxing in there. But the fighter tryouts were difficult because I had a lot going on. And then the fighters demanding a lot of my time. Even between each class, they've got so many questions. This week's been this week I smashed it. It was great. But it's new for me to sort of. I'm teaching every other day to now teaching a couple times every day. Okay, so that's where I've got to up my game as a coach. But this week was brilliant. The athletes really enjoyed the training. We've established a good team here. And today we've had the other half of the sponsored fighters come down. Some of them stayed at home. They were asked to come this week, but it was also Diwali this week. So that's a huge thing. That's time for family in India, Diwali. So the other fighters come today. So I spent Diwali with the fight team, and that yet again shows a huge level of commitment for them to be spending Diwali here. So that was nice. I'm learning a lot about the culture as well. And India is a really fascinating country.
What about
is it just?
Go on, Dan. I was just going to ask. Mate,
I was going to say
fighters if they're all from like the local sort of vicinity and surrounding places, or if they're sort of from all over the world. Because I wondered if they were adjusting to India and to a new place as well.
Well, India's they're all Indian nationals, but India's a huge country. I think it's like, for example, we had some come down today and said, "Oh, it's great to see you. How long was the journey?" And they said 2 days, 2 days driving, or they'll get on a plane. Do you know what I mean? Just like, to go from MK to Cornwall is like sort of 3 hours, right? And I think to go from one end of Goa to the other end of Goa is about 3 hours. That's just Goa. And Goa is the smallest state in India, I think.
Well, the population in India is, as of 2020, is 1.38 billion.
Yeah,
that is insanity. Like, I expected a big number when I just Googled that. I did not expect billion. I got to be honest. Like, I think that goes to show like how big the place is. But like you say,
it's massive.
It's Milton Keynes to Northampton or Cornwall or whatever is a couple of hours. Like, it could take days to that. And I guess you'll see which ones are dedicated, mate. Those guys who are driving like a 2 or 3 day drive to get to you.
Yeah,
they're going to train hard and they're going to give you their best or give you their all day in, day out, simply because they've gone through that just to get there.
Yeah, I mean,
and you teaching different levels though, or is it only fighters? Are you doing like beginners, intermediates?
Teaching different levels. So it's the gym. So I've been doing privates as well. So I did 2 privates before we opened, and I did 2 privates the week we opened. So I'm teaching a lot of the resort guests. So it's on a resort, and a lot of the resort guests, they didn't know anything about MMA, and they see this gym, and they're like, "Whoa, well let's give it a try." So it's for everyone. But right now it's mostly only the fighters that are training in the gym, because it's week 1 we've just opened, so we're waiting for that footfall to come through the gym. So imagine I'll be teaching a lot of people on resort. I don't know what market we're really aiming for here, because I think it's more similar to the market on Phuket Fight Street. I don't know if the market that we're aiming at is the local area of Goa. I'm not too sure. So I'm just gonna have to see how these things go. So yeah, just there's a lot of learning going on.
100%, mate. I think like weird things like that, when you got like a new place in a country which maybe hasn't got a lot of those types of facilities, like once that word of mouth does start spreading, you could see like a lot of business coming in your way, because like the UFC and MMA is massive these days, isn't it? And you're seeing more and more fighters. Like I had Arjan Bula on the show, and obviously he was raised and born in Canada, but like he's got a massive affinity to his Indian roots, and he spoke really passionately about the growth in the Indian markets for wrestling and for MMA and combat sports. And I think every sport, whether it's wrestling, football, boxing, MMA, they all want to break that Indian market. And I think the ones that
talking about it this week.
Yeah, he's been in India this week. I was actually on his social
I
media
do
this
want
morning.
Conor.
Yeah, get him in, mate. Get him in.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. Like Conor's just like thinking money, isn't he? He sees this an open market, and then he's just. I see him posting all this stuff on Twitter, or whatever. I'm like, nothing comes from Conor's heart. He's just thinking money.
I wouldn't be surprised, mate, if he's not even him posting half the stuff anyway. Like, he did a thing after the Ian Gary fight, like an audio, which was obviously him, and he spoke quite passionately about wanting to come back. Obviously in the same division as Ian Gary, and he kind of was mentioning his current time in India as well. And like he sounded, should I say, because it was audio only, he did sound a lot more like that Conor McGregor who came up, rather than the one that we've seen in recent years. Like it was very much about the sport and the competition and wanting to be regarded as the best in the world again. So like I'm always interested. Like one thing which he brings people are interested to see what happens to him or see what happens with him. He kind of brings that unpredictability. But I think a lot of people have soured on him, and like I was one of his biggest fans, and even I, in probably the last 12 months or so, have started to sour on him a little bit because of some certain things he said and done, and just I didn't mind like the build up to the fights and all that sort of stuff, because that's part and parcel, and that was also a big part of his arsenal, was getting inside his opponent's heads, and it worked magnificently for him. But I felt like in the Khabib fight, he obviously went over the line a few times.
I think it's just his reasons for fighting are different, and I don't think he's reevaluated his reasons for fighting. Like the come up's usually more rewarding than like a lot of athletes have a hard time when they actually realize their goals. For example, like Tyson Fury, when he beat Klitschko, and he says, "Well, I got my goal," but they didn't realize actually it was the goal that kept them waking up every morning. If you know what I mean. Realized it, they're like, holy shit, and it's a huge identity crisis, things like that. And I remember, I think I heard John Kavanagh on the Joe Rogan podcast, and after the Eddie Alvarez fight, Kavanagh sort of suggested to him, like, well, fucking well done, mate. Perhaps you should retire now. You're unharmed. You've got 2 world titles. You've got millions of pounds. This is a perfect time to exit. And then he can't, but then he hangs around, and then this happens a lot when fighters hang around. They get injured. I mean, you see what happened with Conor, and it's so often like it's the climb that's most rewarding. Sometimes once you get there, it's like you need another avenue, or maybe even like what GSP did. GSP sort of took some time and then started choosing, like he waited, he retired, and then come back to the business. Perfect opportunity. But he's got loads of money, he's got loads of status, so what's he fighting for now? And there's still good reasons to fight, but he needs to fully understand why, and I'm not sure he does, if you know what I mean. Like, this is why the really sour personality traits are coming out from him. Like, it's just, I don't know. So yeah, he's incredible, but I don't know. It's interesting to see what's keeping him in this sport right now. Like martial arts forever, but it's to keep risking your life in the cage in front of a bloodthirsty crowd. You need proper motivations to do that. And the Conor McGregor coming up was just a different man than this one that's got everything you could ever want right now.
You think as well? So like, there's nothing wrong with if his motivation was just to become like, especially now where he's had a couple of losses, his motivation to get back to being the best fighter in the world. I think that's a good motivation. Yeah. But like you just said there, Richard, it's very easy to be motivated when you've got no money in the bank, you've got nothing, and you know that you're working to get something and to achieve your dreams and stuff like that. And then obviously, once you achieve those dreams, the motivation changes, especially with his other businesses being so successful as well. It means that even if his fighting does kind of peter out and he is not as good as he once was, he's still got more money than he will ever be able to spend, than his grandchildren will ever be able to spend. So he does need, I think you're right, he needs to understand, like, why am I still doing this? And Danny, Gaz has just put a phenomenal question in the chat, and I'm going to put this to both of you, but I'll put it to you first, Danny. Gaz says, if McGregor retires after the Eddie Alvarez fight, would he be regarded as a true great of MMA? Whereas now, people wouldn't put him up there as being a true great. Yes, a pioneer for what, he changed the sport in many ways for a lot of fighters in terms of pay, but in terms of being regarded as a top class fighter, like that GOAT status, if you like, that GOAT tier, where you're regarded as one of the true greats. If he retires after Alvarez with the 2 belts, first to ever do it, and he's done, would you regard him differently to now having a few more losses, going into boxing, stuff like that? Does it change the perception?
Yeah, probably so. I think if he had retired then, I think that would have been good timing financially, good timing physically.
Would have been unbeaten in the UFC.
Yeah, you can do, but there were still fighters to fight in that division, so that would have left some things left unsaid. I think the only way you can get great status, legendary status, is by fighting all the best that's there at that time. And I think if he stopped after that one, it could have been a great decision. Don't get me wrong. If the reasoning was just to be financially secure, he certainly would have been that by then. Then get out and keep your health, sort of thing. But he has gone on longer. He tried to create other opportunities, and just look at the financial situation. I mean, he's in a great financial situation, but he's stuck around the sport. It's caused him a broken leg. It's caused him some losses, but he's also extremely wealthy now. I think a lot of his motivation was the wealth. I think it can take sort of like replacement of power. I think a lot of what he was chasing was power and recognition in terms of being a fighter, as well as the financial sort of status that comes along with it. But I think since he's got some financial status, I think he kind of got lost with that a little bit. Who knows what really goes on in that guy's mind? It's really hard to know. You never know whether he does say something that seems to be from the heart, whether it's truly just from his head, and vice versa. No one really knows anything about Conor McGregor on a personal level. Who knows?
And the other thing as well, mate, is like, I wouldn't pretend to understand how a millionaire, maybe even a billionaire, thinks about their life, because I don't understand that. I can guess, but ultimately I don't understand what it's like to have so much money in my bank account that I can do whatever I want. If I want to hop on a plane to go to India and do some yoga, I can do it. If I want to start a business or I want to go into another sport, I can do it because I don't have to worry about paying my bills, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's you can guess and you can kind of try and look at it, but ultimately we can't understand the decision making that goes into that. And also, people have always said he's great. You speak to anyone, we've spoken to various fighters who've all said even in his early days he had a bit of a crazy streak. And you add in millions.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to get some kind of sense of his personality with everything that's gone on. He's been in the media for and the attention of everyone for a long time. Of course, to get as far as he has with that kind of bravado, he's going to have that sense of wildness about him that doesn't suddenly disappear or anything. It's always going to be there. But regards what he's thinking, how he was thinking maybe before he come into the financial success and becoming UFC champion to after, who knows what he really thinks. I don't know. And as for imagine us in that situation, having all those millions in the bank account. For the most part, most people are not fighters. I do think fighters, especially successful ones, are slightly different and wired different from the normal person, if you will. They're driven in a very unique way. You get businessmen who are driven in a unique way where they can just address time to problematic situations, and they get obsessive in a particular route to get their financial success that way. And fighters, although you do get your intelligent ones that have their own businesses, don't get me wrong, but I think largely, they're not capable in those ways. But it is another way, nevertheless, to getting financially successful, but a very, very unique way. It's certainly not common. I think sometimes because we're fans of all these combat sports and we watch it and we see the wealth that's gained from it, we just presume that it's commonplace. It isn't. These people of rare position. They're not the normal people. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of really interesting comments. Wilkins Matthew says he starched Aldo in 13 seconds after Aldo had spent a decade of being undefeated. Khabib quit before his prime. All the greats eventually lose, and I think that's it, isn't it? It's like ultimately most fighters lose. It's just nature of the beast. But I do also think because of what's gone on since that Aldo fight, and also I think because it was so quick, I think he doesn't always get the credit he deserves for that performance. Like Jose Aldo was legitimately regarded as one of the best ever at that point in time. Like no one had been able to touch him. No one had been able to get close to beating him. But again, Richard, I go back to you, mate. The reason, in my opinion, he beat Aldo in 13 seconds is because he spent 6 months getting inside Jose Aldo's head. And when you look back at all the various videos that he did where he saw him in the street and he's calling him names out the window and stuff like that in Brazil, Portuguese, like he's like everything was just designed to get under Aldo's skin, and Aldo goes steaming into him with just pure emotion, much like what Luke did against Jake Hadley. Pure emotion makes the mistake, and against someone who's got knockout power and is good enough to capitalize on those mistakes.
That was a fight for like just 13 seconds fight, but it was actually a psychological warfare that lasted about 2 years.
That's right, because he pulled out the fight, didn't he? Aldo and
Belt and Cage Warriors was looking at Aldo. And this is the thing that I probably said that Conor is a genius, because he knew he was going to get the belt from the moment he stepped foot into the UFC. And he managed to orchestrate everything in his favor to make sure that it become an absolute reality. So, I think he's a genius. But that fight was 14 seconds, but it was literally like it was
didn't he?
Years
he made it 14 seconds.
Yeah, I think that what made that even more special than the fact that it stopped that 10-year streak that Aldo had in that division. I think what made it even more bewildering was the fact that he predicted the combination would lead to his demise and said how it had happened right at the beginning of the round.
Yeah,
and it did.
And how Aldo duck his head.
Yeah. Aldo isn't a good attacker. He's a really great counter-attacking fighter. He's fairly flat on his feet for someone that fights in quite the lightweight divisions. He doesn't emulate the modern lightweight MMA stylist anymore. If you just look at Petr Yan and Sandhagen, switching stances, there's a larger range of retraction defensive footwork as much as there is going forward with the footwork now. Jose Aldo is very, very planted. That's why he had so much devastating effect with those leg kicks. So I think by getting under his skin and drawing him out to make the first move, he comes forward, like I say, a bit clunky on his feet. He's not very fluent on his feet to come in and surprise you and set something up. He sets you up because you make a mistake with your balance and then he counters. I think that was a lot to do with his demise. The fact that he'd become aggravated, and you're right, he fought with emotion, but what was the cause and effect with that? Well, the cause and effect was he pulled the trigger first and prematurely, didn't prep it up. He just wanted to rip Conor's head off. He wanted to hurt him like it was a street fight, and it woefully went against him. It really, really did. And it was genius work. I think a lot of that fight had been done in all the build-up from years out, and it just intensified as the months and weeks progressed, intensified. Jose Aldo had no one give him disrespect in the way that McGregor did.
When he took his belt, didn't he?
He did
He did the same. He did the same to Eddie Alvarez. like Eddie Alvarez had never been treated the way that he had been treated by Conor McGregor up until that point. And what you've got to remember as well is it's not just the fights and the build up to it, it's the aftermath. Jose Aldo wasn't the same for probably 2 years after that fight. It took him up until probably last year where he started to get a bit of momentum back in his UFC career. Eddie Alvarez has gone to one championship, which is no small promotion by any means, but he was never the same in the UFC. Now, I'm not by any means saying that's down to Conor McGregor. What I'm saying is that the damage psychologically that he did by beating them in the manner that he did certainly had a lasting effect on them. And I think I look at I watched Ian Gary's performance last night very quickly before we just released Rich. Like, I watched Ian Gary's performance last night, and you could see he was very, very nervous in the first couple of minutes because he's young. He's a very young man. He's only 23. He's Irish. He's you've seen all the pictures of him and Conor when Ian Gary was a child and stuff like that. But the way he finished that fight, that clinical, the strike, and the way he just slid out the way, that reminded me of Conor McGregor in his early UFC days. Just the movement. I mean, and I was like, as we've talked about Ian Gary many a time, Daddy, like I really rate him. I'm so excited to see what he could do. And even just for that first probably 2 minutes, I was a little bit worried because I thought, I've never seen him look like this before. But it was a massive occasion, Madison Square Garden, 23 years of age. And I didn't realize that he had fallen out with his team. So for people who don't know, Ian Gary fought for the Cage Warriors title before he made his UFC debut last night. And in the build-up to his fight, he had some sort of fallout, I think, with his coaching team. So on fight day, his coaching team didn't turn up. So he ended up with, I think, a couple of fighters or friends in his corner, I think. Is that right, Dan? Do you know? Or if it was just him?
That's right. Yeah, I heard whispers about that there had been a falling out, and I think it was to do with his personality. We're talking about personalities like Conor McGregor. I think it was a case that he'd walk into the gym and it was all about him and just being disrespectful to other students. That's what I heard. Now, it always takes one side for another side to obviously defend themselves, and only Ian Gary can do that. To me, they are nothing more than whispers and rumors until clarified from both parties. So, I'm certainly not pointing the finger at him, but that's what I heard. I might not be getting it entirely right because I don't take much on the gossip. I sort of overhear it, and I wasn't involved in the conversation. Yeah, I was listening to it. I was listening to the young lads talking about it. So these rumors had got out, but it was to do with that. I think, these big personalities can sometimes, when they're young, as Ian Gary is, maybe, put it over in a distasteful way. And the older, more mature people involved with the club, which is predominantly the coaches, see that as disrespect, and that can cause trouble.
Well, I mean, look at Jake Hadley had a similar issue in the Contenders week when he was there. He upset someone in some way. We don't know what happened, but it just came across in a certain way. I think it's unfortunate, isn't it? Because I felt like for Ian Gary to have to go into a championship fight with no team, it is unfortunate, isn't it? Because whatever's happened, that's a massive occasion for a young fighter, and those coaches and that team, they have prepared him for that fight in the build-up, and that's a journey they've all been on together. So the fact that and he did, to be fair to him, by the way, he went on and won that fight regardless of what happened.
He did. I don't know whether you
but
agree.
It's a journey they've all gone together, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know whether you feel the same, but I feel like this fight was so similar in many, many ways in terms of how they performed and still pulled off the win as Paddy Pimblett. I think there was so much hype around him, and he's got this portrayal of someone that seems to be absolutely fearless, don't suffer from nerves. But to me,
they both
whether he would even say otherwise, I mean, he could say he weren't nervous, but nervousness could be a subconscious thing.
In his post-fight interview, he said, "That's the first time I've ever felt nervous." But he said, once I got going, I was comfortable. But
it was all right. Yeah,
in Madison
Square Garden, got to shake off those webs, haven't you? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we witnessed with Ian Gary, because normally Ian Gary's like, his timing's on point and his distancing and range is on point from the get-go. He was quite a tall lad as well in that weight division. He's like 6'3", I believe. And this other lad was pretty tall as well. I think that was perhaps unusual to have someone matching him in height. Maybe that was a little difficult to get accustomed to. And on top of that, this new pressure performance that he's having to perform with being in its UFC. Yeah, and 23 years old. I mean, crikey, that's you're not fully developed physically, and certainly not fully developed mentally regards dealing with these sort of experiences. So he's going to largely learn on the job. I don't mean necessarily tactically or strategically, although that's clearly, some improvements to be made there as he matures as a fighter. But certainly mentally, he's going to be learning on the job with the whole experience with UFC. But if he can pull it off for another sort of hang around for a good 5-6 fights with some successes, he'll start becoming a real true force to be reckoned with.
Yes. So just before I let Richard go and bring Ben in to talk some boxing, there's a couple of questions I wanted to put to you, Richard, which people left in the chat. Donna asked, she must have missed the bit where we talked about your brother, but obviously your twin brother Richard is a professional fighter, he's a current champion. What's next in for Tom? And also, are you done with professional fighting yourself to focus on coaching, or is that something you're going to continue to pursue yourself?
Next for Tom, he needs to confirm this, but I've not actually spoken to Tom in a little while. But I spoke to my dad the other day, and there's a fight lined up, Cage Warriors at featherweight. That's all I know for Tom, and I'm not done fighting yet. There's every possibility I might fight on New Year's Eve, actually, but I can't
confirm anything yet
about it at the moment. Plans in motion, but I'm out here making a full-time occupation of what I do. Back home in the UK, I'm working this job, that job, and then training effectively. Well, training every night, but it's part-time.
Yeah.
So actually, by me coming out here and coaching, I'm expecting my level to really elevate, because that's all I do now is train. So if anything, I think I'm in a better stead for next time I compete. Like when I competed in August 2020, I was really not in a good place to be competing. Like in my headspace, and I think everyone was struggling with adjustments because the world seemed to have gone a bit mad. But so now I can actually just commit all my time to the craft. I don't really have any distractions. So no, I want to compete more. I can't leave my career where it is. It doesn't feel right. And I'm young, I'm healthy, so I want to fight some more.
Good stuff.
See, the coaching, I'm loving the coaching. The only difference with being a coach and fighting is that I've got to bring the team up to bring myself up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I'm coaching these people, and they are actually incredibly talented, but I see huge gaps in their game. So I can see where to pick the game apart when we're doing sparring rounds. But is it, from what I see right now, it's not the same standard of sparring that I have at BST. So
okay.
But this is the thing: we've only just opened. It's week one. There's actually, I expect we'll have a few UFC dudes coming down before the end of the year. A few of them have expressed interest, so it's a huge opportunity, and my level is going to grow. So I don't know. I'm taking literally right now. I'm taking every day as it comes. So that's how I going about this whole thing. I'm just getting better every day. So, but there's the possibility that I might fight on New Year's Eve.
Good stuff. I look forward to it, mate. Look forward to it. Right, Richard. I appreciate your time, mate, as ever. Really appreciate you joining us this evening, and it's been good to catch up, mate, and hear about your new venture in India. So hopefully we'll once you get your fight sorted, mate, we'll have you back on, and we can talk to you a little bit about the preparation for that and stuff like that, mate. But you enjoy your time in India as you have been, and I'm sure by the time next time we speak, you'll be even more well adjusted to the dogs chasing you up the street, and you'll have found a safe jogging route to avoid those stray dogs.
Running on the beach is pretty beautiful.
There you go, mate.
Yeah. So I don't know. Thanks for having me on, Si. Pleasure to speak to you again. Pleasure to see you, Danny. I hope everyone's
likewise,
well.
Rich.
I'm starting to look a bit more now. I've not found a barber.
You do.
That's it, mate.
You look like him, even more.
So that's
right.
I've got to find where I get my hair. So just keep your eyes peeled for the tryouts. That's going to be published. Small docu-series on YouTube. It's sort of, I've structured it to progressively educate the audience at home on MMA. I know most people know who American Kickboxing Academy are. They're going to come here. Most people know what mixed martial arts are. But if we're putting content out on YouTube, there's going to be a lot of people and a few people that I've trained this week, they're on the resort. They had no idea what it was, but I did one-to-one with them. And so I've educated them. And this docu-series is about American Kickboxing Academy, Mandarin Beach. But it's also going to be, like an education for people that don't know MMA. So that's quite exciting, and that should be published soon. So just keep an eye out for that. And
good stuff.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much, Richard. Really appreciate it, mate. And we'll definitely see you very, very soon. But don't go anywhere, people, because we got another guest joining us immediately as our resident boxing pundit, Mr. Ben Doughty, joins us. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, boys. How's it going?
Very good, mate. Very
All
good. What a performance that was last night by Mr. Canelo Alvarez. That was pretty sensational, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was expected. I didn't think as much it was a big fight that a lot of people were looking forward to, and obviously you had the historical angle based on the result, whoever won the fight. I didn't see people being split down the middle, really. I couldn't find too many people who were picking Plant to pull off the upset. I don't think Canelo, people know how good he is at this point. I think he did the kind of job, a very Canelo-like job, really. I think he's workman-like is the term. He walked him down. I think Plant, he had the size and the skills and the defensive skills and the speed to prevent himself from being beaten up early doors. And it allowed him to be kind of competitive, but I don't think he ever looked like winning. And I think Canelo kind of did his thing, really, And then obviously he turned it on in the 11th round, and you know what happened.
Indeed, he did get the finish. Was there anything from Plant that surprised you? Do you think, or how do you think he did? Do you think his performance was about as good as you expected it to be? Obviously, he was unbeaten, but hadn't really, as we discussed last week, he hadn't really fought anyone of note, really.
I think he was still an unknown quantity at that level, like you say, Simon. I think, to be honest with you, it looked to me like he'd frozen in the headlights a little bit early doors. That was my impression, whether I'm right or wrong. That was what I was feeling when I was watching the first 3 rounds. I thought, you know what? Because some people were saying to me, Canelo will take him out in 4 rounds, and I thought, no, you know what? This one will go a while. And then, maybe the late rounds might go the distance. And then in the first 2 or 3 rounds, I thought maybe not. Maybe people are right that he'll do a demolition job on him. Because he just looked a little flustered and under the pressure. But Plant definitely grew into the fight. It warmed into the fight in the mid-rounds. Like I say, I don't feel he ever looked like winning. And Canelo has gears, is one thing about him, I think Plant, like I say, he is a good fighter. I think Ricky Hatton said, I think I mentioned it on the show last week, and Ricky Hatton echoed it when he said he had certain stylings, a bit like Floyd Mayweather, in terms of looked like he'd studied Mayweather and some of the stuff he tried to acquire those tricks. And Ricky Hatton said his style is most similar to the one guy who stood Canelo on his head. But I think there's still light years of difference between Floyd Mayweather and Caleb Plant, in various ways. I just think I'm not, reaching for the superlatives, but at the same time, Canelo is just a formidable fighter. He does certain things that you don't see other fighters do. I'll give it. I think Danny might appreciate this in terms of any kind of crossover kind of chemistry we might have in terms of technique with boxing and MMA. But Canelo throws that left hook to the body, which is that that popular shot. It's a very Latin kind of Mexican shot. They call it left hook to the liver. But he throws that shot. I'm trying to see if it comes in the camera. You see the way I'm trying to position it. It's not happening, is it? But you know what I mean. That shot when you throw like a kind of half uppercut, half hook to the body. It lands to the body, but I've got to land it to the jaw for you to even see it on camera.
Yeah.
But he throws that to the body. Then he touches with the left hand. A lot of people use that technique where you touch with your left hand and you throw the rear hand, right? You touch with the lead hand and throw the rear hand. So you only punch one of them. You don't use the lead hand as a jab. You use it as a measuring stick. I've never really seen too many people throw that shot to the body downstairs. And then he touched upstairs. It might not seem like much, but logistically, it's just different, And the way he throws a left hook, then he throws a right uppercut. And then sometimes he seems to come back with a straight left, which is not really a jab, but like a kind of like a power jab, So I just even the finish, the second knockdown when he threw like 1, 2, like one to the head, then one to the body, then another 1, 2 to the head, which is just an interesting way to throw 4 straight punches. I just think he drills obsessively. I don't know if you've watched him training, but you see stuff on Instagram and all that kind of thing, and it shows little glimpses of what he's doing with Eddie Reynoso in the gym, and he's just. There's one coach in the States who's got a maxim saying drillers make killers, and I think Canelo is a very good example of that because he seems to be so dedicated and focused that he just drills in the gym all the time. You see the stuff he does, and not all of it is kind of eye candy social media stuff. Some of it is helping to create this monster that you've got today. Who he happens to be the first undisputed super middleweight champion in the division's 37-year history. Some people say no. Some people say Joe Calzaghe was that. If you want my take on it, Calzaghe never held all 4 belts exactly at the same time because of the politics and the inability to satisfy those different political kind of entities, the sanctioning bodies. But Calzaghe definitely was the number 1 super middleweight in the world, and he kind of did do what Canelo is being lauded as having done last night. But if you want to get really technical, Canelo is the first guy to hold all those 4 belts at the same time, and he's gone after them this year. That was his agenda, right? He's gone after, I think it's 11 months that he's collected those belts in their entirety. So you've got to give him his props.
Yeah, there's not a long amount of time, is it, to collect? And it's less than a year, isn't it, to accumulate various belts. What's next for Canelo in terms of what? There's not really a lot for him to do. Is there anybody out there who could give him a bit of trouble, do you think?
I don't really see anybody at super middleweight, Simon, to be honest with you. And this is where it gets interesting when you talk about his next move, because he's obviously driven by goals. Canelo has the kind of the commercial leverage that he can fight whoever he likes. And he can plot his career and his ongoing legacy. And I know that's very important to him. So you would think automatically, okay, well, I guess we're talking about going back up to 175, back to light heavyweight, where he has been up there when he beat Sergey Kovalev back in 2019. But the trouble with that is, I think there's a few guys at light heavyweight, most principally Artur Beterbiev, who might be a bit too much for him, which is, there's no shame in that if that's the case, because Canelo, let's remember, he turned pro at like welterweight, I believe, when he was a teenager. So Canelo was a light middleweight only 7 years ago, campaigning at 154 pounds. So he might not fancy the Beterbiev fight, or that might be seen as a step too far. So if that is the case, maybe he might be in a degree of no man's land when he's looking for new mountains to climb. The question is, what form will that take? I don't see anybody at 12 stone right now. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just being dominant. Being the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world and putting a reign together. Guys like Joe Louis didn't necessarily have anybody threatening to fight for several years, but they went on and did it. And Carlos Monzon, 7 years a middleweight champion. Perhaps we're too obsessed with division hopping these days and titles and baubles. Perhaps he just needs, if this is his best weight, and he doesn't feel comfortable taking on a bit of a killer at 175 in Beterbiev. I'm not saying he doesn't, by the way. He might decide he does want to do that. But if he doesn't, then perhaps he can just settle where he is and fight all comers. Because people will pay for Canelo against anybody, won't they?
Yes, he is at that point now. But I want to ask you a couple of questions in the build-up to a comment, which I'm going to get to from Gaz now, because I know, I don't think, should I say, your reaction is going to be positive to it. So I want to ask you some questions to build up to it. In terms of financially, has Canelo made a lot of money in recent years. I wasn't sure how he gets paid in terms of compared to some of the heavyweight fights and stuff like that.
No, he is the cash cow. I mean, he is absolutely I would say he's the highest paid fighter in the world, and since Floyd Mayweather Jr. You know, Anthony Joshua would be his closest rival, almost certainly. I mean, Tyson Fury must have made some serious dough over his series with Wilder, but I would say it would be Canelo, then Joshua, then you'd be looking at perhaps Fury in that pecking order.
So, Gaz says after Jake Paul destroys Tommy Fury, he has said that he wants to fight Canelo. So I'm asking you, is there enough money in the world that Canelo would take that fight and finally put Jake Paul out of his misery?
Interesting question, because obviously it shouldn't be sanctioned, because it would be. It would be tantamount to a slaughter. I mean, because Canelo, one thing Canelo ain't going to do, I can guarantee, is mess about and move around. And some people think Floyd Mayweather carried Conor McGregor. It'd be interesting by the by in Danny's view on that, because it's his world and my world, coming together on that occasion in 2017. And I would be interested in his perspective on that. But Canelo is not going to do that. Canelo would just do what Canelo does and just absolutely steamroll someone like that who doesn't belong in the ring with him. I think from a kind of moral perspective and sanctioning perspective, I think that would be very questionable. But so here's the question: because Floyd Mayweather has got no qualms about he doesn't mind making telephone numbers, whether some people feel he's disrespecting the sport or not. And I know there are people who could say to me, all right, so Ben, you're a pundit who's vaguely well known on the internet, right? And some people think you're a boxing expert. Some people can't stand you and think you're a total fraud, by the way. But some people think you're a boxing expert. Let's think of the lamest thing you could possibly do, which is so against everything you supposedly stand for. But we'll pay you even $100,000 for it and see if you say no, because of your modest financial situation, Ben. Do you tell me you're not going to take this 100 or 200 grand to be a complete tosser and start calling something which is really against your value base? Would I do it or wouldn't I? And would I be betraying my children or whatever if I didn't just take the money? So we know Floyd Mayweather will do things which some people think is legacy tarnishing or disrespects the sport and bites the hand that fed him. He doesn't have any qualms about that, and he's got a whole raison d'etre behind that: money, power, respect, all the rest of it. But will Canelo have the same value base, or will Canelo be more like, well, listen, I can make telephone numbers whoever I fight, and I'm not giving a clown like this a stage or a platform, and he doesn't even deserve to be in the ring with me? Part of me thinks Alvarez is more likely to turn his nose up at something like that. That's the kind of impression I get from him. I could be wrong. I don't think. Tommy Fury should be able to handle the guy, right, without any problems at all. Yeah, I hope that's answered the question. It may be I think conclusive, but
I think the Tommy Fury thing is really interesting because ultimately they are at similar stages in their boxing career, but Tommy Fury has obviously grown up within boxing and a boxing family, etc., etc. In terms of actual fights and things like that, they're at a fairly similar level. I would imagine Tommy Fury's had many amateur fights. I don't know, but I'm sure.
I don't know. You know what? I don't think he has, Simon. And it's interesting what you say.
That surprises me, that does he? Because I don't think their professional experience is not that vastly different, is it?
No, and you raise a good point, because if he wasn't Tyson Fury's brother, and I believe they're half brothers, however important or unimportant that might be.
Yeah.
As I understand it, they have a different mother. They definitely have John Fury as the father. They're a product of his seed, both of them, okay? Mm-hmm. But I believe the half brothers. So if he wasn't Tyson Fury's, if he didn't have the same dad as Tyson Fury, what would we think of him? Would he be anything? I know we wouldn't have heard of him, would be the thing, but suppose he was just a guy.
This fight.
Do you know what I mean? And even if he was, suppose he had a following that came from some other reason, a trajectory that came from some other reason than being Tyson Fury's brother. What would we actually think of him in terms of what he's done? Because he hasn't really beaten anybody up to now, you know what I mean? And some of his opponents, I can't remember how many fights he's had, but some of his first couple of opponents were woeful. Is Tommy Fury necessarily that good in any case? And is there a huge class gap between him and the YouTuber who started boxing, who's got himself up to a certain confidence level or not? I don't know. We have this notion that Fury comes from stock because his name's Fury. But I think he's still got a lot to prove, really. I mean, I think he should be able to beat a guy who, first and foremost, is not really a boxer, but has jumped on a boxing bandwagon. But like you say, is Tommy Fury all that? I think it's inconclusive right now.
I just had a quick look at Tommy Fury's Wikipedia page, which I know is not always spot on. He's had 7 professional fights. He's won all of them. But as you said, a lot of them, I've only seen a couple of them myself, but I wasn't.
Some of the opponents were terrible.
Yeah, I mean, the last person he fought wasn't even a boxer, which was on that same card that Jake Paul fought on. I think, Jake Paul again. I think the reason people think that maybe this Tommy Fury should, be able to take care of him is that Tommy Fury is a boxer. Jake Paul is predominantly a YouTuber. He used to work for Disney and is kind of, he has been training in boxing for a good few years. But in terms of a professional career, he had 1 amateur fight against another YouTuber. Then he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Fury will be his 5th professional fight. 2 of those were against obviously MMA fighters in Ben Askren and Tyrone Woodley. The others were against Nate Robertson, who was a former basketball player, and Ensign Gibb, who is another YouTuber. So with that in mind, that record versus Tommy Fury's 7-0 against, or 6-0 versus professional boxers, and then 1 versus Anthony Taylor, who is he? I have to double check what he is predominantly. I thought he was a YouTuber, but I'm not 100% sure. But the 2 records against each other, Tommy Fury should win, shouldn't he, as the boxer of the 2? But you just don't know, and I just think it's going to be fascinating. And I know, Ben, that you're not a massive fan of the YouTuber, and you said that, I think not the last time you were on last week, but the time before, you're going to have a look at it. Did you manage to have a look at any of his fights or his work?
I actually reneged on that obligation, sort of forgetfully and apathetically. Now it's happened twice. A gauntlet's been laid down. The next time we speak, I promise to have done some degree of homework and perusal regarding Jake Paul, right? Not Logan, yeah? That's the one I'm going to watch. Yeah,
Jake Paul. So okay. I think maybe as punishment, Ben, we should have you on to preview the Fury versus Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul fight the week before.
And can I just ask, Ben, you mentioned about Conor McGregor and Mayweather. Did you watch that one?
I did. I got up in the morning at 4 or 5 in the morning to watch it as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I thought it was interesting. I think it could have been made a whole lot more interesting, perhaps, because it was a crossover, but instead of making it, MMA crossing over into the pure realm of boxing, I think it would have been more interesting to perhaps do it in a cage with MMA gloves on, but still just boxing. I think that would have perhaps changed the environment a little bit, or made it a bit more fair. Obviously, the punch is obviously much more consequential, being the MMA gloves would cause any external damage to the face. I think it would have even things up more. I still think Mayweather would be the man to come up on top in any boxing format, regardless whether it's with proper boxing gloves or MMA gloves. I think it's a different entity when putting in kicks and knees. I think then it's a step too far, because Conor McGregor is a lot bigger than Mayweather. But what I found, I think, perhaps interesting about how I thought that fight went, you got to remember, if you look at the statistics and you take out the fact that Mayweather may have been playing around or not, he's supposed to have landed more strikes, I think, than Pacquiao landed. And I don't know what you take on that stats, or whether that's any stats that you knew about, but I found that really absolutely intriguing. Bearing in mind that I'm thinking that Mayweather didn't want to play around too much, although there were times that once he knew he had control, he started looking relaxed in there. But I actually think that Conor McGregor got under his skin a little bit, and I think partly for this reason. He never faced anyone that seems to have a bigger mouth than him. I actually went along to watch one of the, they do these pre-fight get-togethers. So I actually went to Wembley to watch it.
I was there that day as well, Danny.
Right, yeah. I went there to watch it, and it's all intriguing. But Conor McGregor is a real good talker on the mic, as Mayweather is. But I just felt like he had the edge on Mayweather on that front, which is unusual for Mayweather. He wouldn't have experienced that before. And the other part is they were entering a boxing arena where Mayweather's clearly the better boxer, But Conor McGregor was always going to be a superior fighter, per se, if you know what I mean. That if it was a real fight, Conor McGregor's going to beat his ass. I think that must have been a strange psyche for Mayweather to go into. But I don't know. I felt like, Mayweather almost looked nervous a little bit, maybe, or I don't know whether he's put off by his size, but I was actually surprised how the first sort of like 3 rounds went. What was your take on what you saw?
I thought it was very surreal. I thought the spectacle. Floyd was boxing like he'd never boxed in his life before, walking forward with his hands up, right? Like he was walking him down casually. Somebody described it, a certain pro fighter of a certain level in the States said, that's what we do when we're pro fighter spars with an amateur kid in the gym. That's what we do. You walk them down, you let them take shots on your gloves and arms, and that's all Floyd was doing. But see, I don't think, Danny, that he held him up deliberately. Thinking like, I don't believe Floyd could have took him out in 2 or 3 rounds if he'd have wanted to, because he, like you said, he's still a world class combat athlete. Who I think he's an all time great in his realm, and he's still a big tough, a bigger man and a big tough guy who can take an elite beating in a different context, right? So I don't believe Floyd, regardless of the massive, gargantuan class gap. Regardless of that, I still don't think he could have took him out whenever he wanted to. So I think he just cruised it and bided his time and waited till the guy had weakened and the defences had become more porous and jumped on him. I don't think he carried him as such. I just think he cruised it, Floyd. But he wasn't. You see, Floyd doesn't really. You talk about the amount of times Pacquiao hit him compared to McGregor. Floyd never fought that way before, but he was walking forward with that kind of stone wall, high gloves. Because obviously he's a genius. He can fight more than one way. But he wasn't giving him that plenty of stepping and sliding and shoulder rolls and pivoting thing, really, was he? He had high hands and he walked. He pretty much walked to him a lot of the time, Floyd. So, but I think he. I'm just thinking that I think you're right. Mayweather's been an absolute genius, and I just think if you see any of the successes that McGregor's had, it's that southpaw left cross hand that he has, and he punches it from range. He needs space to do it, so he quite often uses kicks to push people out onto this really extended cross hand that he has. And I think Mayweather knows that was his only real knockout punch that he's got that could trouble him. And I think you're right. He was just pushing close, so he just couldn't get full leverage on the shots. And then waited for the latter rounds. He started to look really good in the latter rounds, Mayweather, and you could see that the different pace, the different sport, the different range of that boxing brings, and the different arena being that it's a square that you can get cornered in. I think McGregor started to feel the pressure, and he couldn't recover his heart rate in between the rounds, and fatigued and got weaker and weaker. And like you said, I think it was a really good description. Waited until his defense become porous, and fatigue does make that happen. Yeah, I think that's a perfect analysis. I couldn't put it better. That's why.
Ben, a couple of questions. One thing I was going to ask you very quickly: have you seen the Mayweather versus Logan Paul fight?
Nah, you know what? I saw some bits of Instagram reels that you can't avoid. Because you see the bit where you this and you suddenly see it, and you see it for like 20 seconds. So
I just wondered if you'd seen the bit where a lot of people said that basically Mayweather was not supposed to knock him out, and he caught him, and Logan Paul kind of slumps forward, and Mayweather holds him up for a few seconds.
I've seen that. I've seen that little.
What do you make of that? Do you think he did look as if he went a little bit heavy, but I don't know.
Probably, yeah. Listen, I mean, I've just come from a show last night, a white collar show, because I do a lot of work with I won't say the brand, but because of the contents I'm about to say. But I do a lot of work with a lady in the East End who's been running great white collar shows for over 10 years, and I help her out. I train the boxers who come in. A lot of them come in raw. They've never done it before. We train them for 12 or 13 weeks, get them ready, get them matched up. It's a lot of fun. It's a bit like a reality TV show every time. Ordinary men and women, or extraordinary men and women, as the case might be, all getting ready to do something they've never done before. And then you get the ones who come back who end up getting sort of half competent at it and quite good, and some of them end up thinking there's something they're not. But that's quite fun as well. All the delusions that goes with it. It's it's a wonderful melting pot of the world, white collar boxing. So anyway, we're forever having walkarounds and deals and arrangements, because that's just the way it is. Because you're doing it to put bums on seats and to have a good show. And some people sell a lot. They're very popular. They sell lots of tables. And some of them need holding back. Some of them need boosting up and all the rest of it. So there's plenty of stuff that goes on. And you can see people holding people up, and you see sometimes we get people who are relatively inexperienced but more experienced than the other person, who've agreed to move someone around, but they're still not so mature in the ring that they can do it as well as a journeyman, a veteran might do. So they hit someone with a big shot. Next minute, they're almost, you can see the apologetic nature of them, and then they're trying to hold somebody up. And you see it all the time, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if, because if you're going to make these kind of sums of money, and you talk about someone who's not a boxer fighting someone who's an all-time great in the sport, even though he's knocking on a bit in age, there has to be a conversation. And I've heard, obviously at the white collar level, when it means nothing, I've heard conversations with people saying, okay, let's do it, right? But the thing will have to be, if one of us gets hurt, the other person's got to back off. Yeah, you don't go for the kill. I hear it all the time. So I don't suppose it's any different at that level when you're pulling off a massive kind of scam like that. You know what I mean? To say, listen, you're not going to kill this guy, are you? No, because you've got to be friends if you're making that amount of money together, right? I mean, I'm not talking about in boxing at the elite level, but it does happen at the elite level too. Even back in Jack Johnson's day in the early 1900s. He fought a guy called Jim Johnson, which ended in a draw in Paris. It was the first World Heavyweight Championship fight between two black fighters. It would have been about 1912, I believe. No, 1909 it was in Paris. Johnson versus Jim Johnson. So they both had the same name, both black, both fighting each other in 1909 in Paris. And Johnson said to him, listen, I haven't been in the ring in a little while. Don't get my rag out is what the phrase he's supposed to have used. Do what, use your loaf and don't get my rag out. And basically what he's saying is, don't trouble me too much. I'm going to keep the title, but you can make some money too. But if you don't piss me off and double cross me, otherwise, because then who knows what might happen. And boxing is professional boxing is a lot more like that than people would believe, I'm not saying it's all hooky and it's all this and that. A lot of what you see is absolutely beautiful, highest form of competition, and that both men and their teams are giving it every last bit of their blood and marrow to win. But some of it is not like that. Some of it is more like, well, listen, come on, you know the score. And it must have been with Mayweather and Paul, had to be.
Yeah, well, I think there's a little giveaway actually with Mayweather when he was getting interviewed afterwards, and the reporter was trying to perhaps dig at him a little bit, that he perhaps should have dealt with him a lot quicker and perhaps put him away and not go the distance and stuff. And it's kind of like making a jab, but maybe you're just too past it and you couldn't get the job done. And he goes, listen, it perhaps wasn't about that. Along these lines it was. He's saying, look, it was all about money. Look how much money I made. Look how much money we generated. And we just used you media because you're so stupid. And we used you media to generate the interest to back up the money. He goes, I'm the one laughing. You're not. And it basically was,
And that is why I refuse to buy into it. That is why I refuse to buy into it and don't play ball.
Yep.
And I don't try to promote any interest in that kind of thing with my little tiny bit of gravitas and following. I don't buy into it because I'm not going to be I've got whatever disadvantages I've got in life. I'm not going to add to them by being a stooge for something like that.
So that's interesting that you mentioned that, Ben. Just quickly, Gaz sent in a question earlier, and he said, what would Ben's price be to be a pundit on TV for a Triller show? So that's like all these kind of YouTuber fights and stuff like that.
I'd probably the going rate. I don't know. It's what, for like Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones? Well, that depends.
Yeah, well, more so I think he's aiming more so at the like the Jake Paul stuff, which is obviously a bit less tasteful to you.
I don't know. I wouldn't fancy doing it, that's for sure. But let's say if it was Roy Jones versus Mike Tyson, I would have done that, along with Snoop Dogg and whoever else. And I've been like, it's kind of, it is what it is, and let's not get it twisted. But it's still Roy Jones and Mike Tyson. If they were sparring 100%. In my back garden, I'm sure I'd have a look at it to see what they were up to and how they look together at this age. But also Triller, I realise I'm kind of weird at the question and trying to sneak out of it, but Triller were also going to do the Cambosos Lopez, Teofimo Lopez fight, so I would be very happy to do that. But to be honest, I think if someone said, "Listen, Ben, we've seen you on the A.C.E podcast, and that's how we discovered you. We think you're great. Would you do the Tommy Fury, Jake Paul thing?" I suppose I would do it, and I suppose they would say the figure to me, and it would be more money than I've earned for commentary before, I would hope, right? But I would say to them, but you've got to, if you want me, I'm going to call it like I see it. Because bear in mind, I've done commentary for small hall shows at leisure centres, and some people haven't wanted me back because I pissed people off. Because I've said I've seen it the way I've seen it, and I've said I don't know what's wrong with this guy, but he seems to think he seems to be labouring under the misapprehension that he's like a prime Mike Tyson or something like that. When in actual fact, he's closer to Jade Goody or something like that. So another time there was a female fighter who won. They called her the Pink Tyson, oddly enough, which is a marketing scam. She had nothing whatsoever, stylistically in common with the heavyweight that was Mike Tyson, and she just about squeezed home against another girl who was even more incompetent than she was. And at the end of it, she started saying that when I said about the decision, it was close. What do you think? She said, it was a joke. It was absolute bullshit. I won every round. And I just said to her, you didn't win every round. Absolutely not. Which I know it's not really interviewer type behaviour. You're supposed to go with what they say. But I just said, no, absolutely not. What you want, lay off the pipe, love. But so people have not wanted me back previously because of the way I've done it. So I would say I'll take the Triller money once, but let's see if they want me again.
Spot on.
That's a good way of putting
it. Absolutely good answer. Okay, Ben, we're gonna have to let you go there, my friend, because I'm on super tight schedule this evening. Just very quickly, Ben, is there any fights in particular you're looking forward to over the next sort of November, December period?
It was planned Canelo, really. That's what I would have said if you'd asked me last week. I'm trying to think, what else have we got? There is something in December, isn't there? There's something in December.
There's next week is Kid Galahad and Kiko Martinez, and
I mean that's a bit of a retread, to be honest with you. That's not too exciting. I'm trying to think. I seem to think there's something on December 11th.
Joseph Parker versus Derek Chisora on the 18th of December.
Pretty uninspiring too. Pretty uninspiring.
So look, Terence Crawford, Sean Porter.
Yeah, that's a good fight. That's a good fight. That would be the one. That's a good fight. Biterbiev versus Marcus Brown. Yeah, we spoke about Biterbiev within the Canelo context, but no, you know what? Sean Porter versus Terence Crawford is an interesting fight. Sean always gives value for money. He is an elite welterweight. He's a tough son of a gun. I think he will tell us things about Crawford that we didn't already know, because some people believe that Crawford is the best fighter in the world, not Saul Canelo Alvarez. It's a more minority point of view, but it's quite a sizable minority who hold that view. Okay. So Porter has been involved in a lot of great fights. He's a great yardstick. I'm not ruling him out, by the way, from winning necessarily, but he's an underdog. So that's the fight that I would most look forward to before the end of the year.
Good stuff. I'm sure we'll get you on over the coming weeks to talk a bit of boxing, because like I say, you put me and Danny to shame on the boxing front, so it's and I know that the viewers have been enjoying having that bit of boxing knowledge, which they're all from. A lot of them are more familiar with boxing than MMA as well, so that's always good. But Ben, as ever, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us, my friend, and really appreciate your time. Cheers.
Cheers. See you soon.
Cheers, Ben.
Cheers, Ben.
Good stuff. Right. Danny, as ever, my timings have been all over the shop this evening, so I'm going to fly through the weekend's MMA. I know it's a lot, but just very quickly, what did you make of the Bellator title fight between Pitbull and I've forgotten his name. I knew I was going to do that.
Instead of watching that one, I ended up watching Gallagher instead.
Okay,
I had a choice which one to squeeze in. Yeah.
Go on,
I wanted to watch that one.
You talk about that one then, and I'll briefly give a thing on the.
Yeah, it's really good because Gallagher's gone down a weight, hasn't he? He looked really good, to be honest. I thought he was looking really, really good. Made some really good decisions, and then just let himself down and made a couple of bad choices as well. He just wasn't consistent with the choice making that he did. They're both going guillotines on each other, weren't they? They both kept headhunting each other. I felt like they got something there. But it was that Apache mix that finally secured it. But Gallagher demonstrated really good takedowns, really good submission and scrambling capabilities. He's really becoming well-rounded. The kid's still young, and he's had a change of team. A change of team. I think he's been playing. Initially, he was training in both, but I think there was issues, wasn't there, training back in Ireland, that he had a lot of family and friends that were interrupting. He didn't feel that he could be the professional athlete in camp as he can be when he's overseas training. So, that takes a little bit to get used to, but you can definitely tell his skills are improving. It just wasn't his night in the end, but I think there's more to come from Gallagher. I've not always liked the way he's tried to portray himself. I kind of felt like he's trying to copy Conor McGregor somewhat. And I kind of found that irritating, but the kid's young. We got kind of like given benefit of doubt on that. But there's no two ways about it. He's got some talent there. And I don't think this is the end of him by any stretch. There's a little hiccup on the road as he progresses as a young fighter into a more mature fighter. And yeah, watch this space. I think he's going to be getting back onto that winning roster in no time at all.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It was Peter Quilly versus Patricki Pitbull in the main event for the vacant title. I thought Peter Quilly looked really quite comfortable. I was fully expecting him to pick up the victory because, as you know, I'm not a massive fan of the Pitbulls, but obviously Patricio had won the title and then vacated it because he didn't want to fight his brother. So they did this title fight between him and Peter Quilly. Their previous bout, Quilly had won after he busted open Patricki through a referee stoppage. And I thought Quilly looked really comfortable. And then all of a sudden, in the second round, Patricki just opened up with a big shot and he caught Peter Quilly's never been stopped. And he caught him and he was out cold for a few seconds.
Really? Was it literally just one hit? Yeah.
I think it was like a combination 1-2, and it was a good shot. And his face just went blank and he went down. And sometimes you just get hit on the button. It was like right on the button, and he just went down. So I was very disappointed for Peter Quilly. But such is the MMA and boxing, that's the way it is. You get caught, you get slapped sometimes. But
that's it.
I've got to say, by the way, I really hope Bellator run more shows in Ireland because they've got a big contingency of Irish fighters. You can obviously bring in other Irish fighters who are not signed to Cage Warriors. I think it'd be a really good idea because the atmosphere was sensational. They seem to have a really big following up that sort of neck of the woods for Bellator. So I'd really like to see them do that some more. Then moving on, last night we had UFC 268. This was what a sensational card, mate. Just sensational,
very, very good
from start to finish. And we can't really do it justice, unfortunately, because we're trying to fit in everything into a sort of 1.5 hours. I'm already over time than I'm supposed to, so I apologize. We're going to have to fly through. We talked about Ian Gary earlier, sensational.
We did.
I wanted to ask you about the Gianfilante versus Chris Barnett, just because Vilante's retired now, heavyweight. I wouldn't call him, he's not like a legendary status or anything. A good fighter over the years who's entertained the fans. But Chris Barnett does not look like a fighter, even at heavyweight.
No.
He just doesn't look like a guy who can do this stuff. And then all of a sudden, he's kind of plodding through the fight. I thought Villante looked the more dangerous. It just generally was just play. And he's like a short, big, stocky, chunky guy, Chris Barnett. And then all of a sudden, he just flies off a spinning wheel kick and KOs Gianfilante. It was just
that Chris
does
Bennett
a somersault to celebrate and lands on his bum.
It doesn't look like stereotypical fighter that you'd see in modern day terms. Very, very barreled, short at the weight as well. But he's definitely tough, this Chris Barnett. Definitely tough. And he has got good technique. He knows how to throw these punches and kicks in a way that can be a little flamboyant when he's got the energy to do so. He's not an easy person to just push over. You've got to take him with some kind of respect. Look, you leave your hands down in that weight division against anyone, even if they throw a windmill punch. It could potentially knock you out. But he actually and executed a really nice kick. And being that he's really short and dumpy, to stretch out that kick, is one of the longest type of strikes that he could have potentially ever thrown. And I think that just caught Valentino out. I think it just didn't expect it. It hit him clean, knocked him down. What can you do? What can you say? You got to keep your hands up at all times. It was great, yeah.
So moving into the main card, we had Justin Gaithy versus Michael Chandler. I know you're a massive, huge fan of Michael Chandler, but this was probably fight of the year, or certainly in that conversation. And when you consider where we are in, 7th of November, just a few days away from my 40th birthday, just saying.
Yeah, incredible performance from both. I just feel like because Chandler sometimes pushes so hard, that can also be detrimental to the longevity, effectiveness of his style. And he began to gas, didn't he? He was targeting Gaethje's leg, which and had really good lead leg awareness regards receiving the kick early on. But as he became tired and got more flat-footed, Gaethje then began to really catch Chandler with those leg kicks, and they were really hitting home, making Chandler have to switch stance a lot, which, is not out of sorts with switching stance and still being effective. Chandler, he's good either or way. We did see some really good wrestling exchanges from both, which was really interesting. We saw Gaethje being picked up and slammed, which he's done to so many people in the past. We actually see that done to Gaethje, but he overshot it and scrambled out of it, and Gaethje actually turned it to his advantage. But Gaethje's leg was actually damaged early on. I really believe he got very, very flat-footed after being connected by one of Chandler's kicks. I just think things could have been different if Chandler continued to target that. But I just think he got headhunty because he had rocked Gaethje. He thought he could finish Gaethje and kept on targeting that head. I think he should have continued to the leg, and I think there could have been a different outcome to this whole match. But look, it is what it was. Gaethje's got bags and bags of cardio. Chandler's more explosive and dangerous in little pockets and flips and farts. But Gaethje was just utterly impressive and closed in, shut him down, showed some really, really good technical boxing with head movement, anticipating Chandler's head movement to land those uppercuts repetitively. Great fight all round. I mean, you're right. We're not doing it justice. We could really break this down and critique it and talk about many, many exciting points in the fight. But the best thing is, if you didn't watch it, viewers, watch it. Even as someone that don't understand MMA, you'll understand that this was a great match between two warriors who are athletic to the max.
100%, mate. Then we had Shane Burgos defeated Billy Quarantillo via unanimous decision. Again, I thought this was a pretty good fight. Good performance by Shane Burgos. I'm really apologise, mate, but I'm going to have to rush you along. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Burgos, look, really big at featherweight, huge featherweight, and really knows how to take centre stage in that cage. Billy was more, acrobatic in his approach and more dexterous in his approach, but it's Burgos's tight form that eventually ground down on Billy. And it was just that strict form just played dividends for him, working the body, working the legs. It was a brilliant war, though. Another one that, because we're skimming over it, it makes it seem like it was just a regular fight. It wasn't. It was incredible. They was both in the pocket a lot, doing a lot of damage. But Billy began to break down in that latter round, and went to Burgos. Burgos did really, really good. Very, very good fighter. Really impressed with him.
Yes, indeed, mate. Marlon Vera. What an impressive performance this was versus Frankie Edgar, a legend of the sport. Frankie Edgar's ranked 8. Vera 13. I don't think that'll be staying the same way around. No.
Yeah, I do wonder whether Frank Edgar is he staying around too long. You would think not when you watch the whole of the fight. He was predominantly winning the fight. He was taking Marlon Vera down with well-timed shoots. Didn't overtrade in the pocket where it's risky. He fought a very, very well-educated, experienced fighting approach match against Marlon Vera. But Marlon Vera, look, he had no regard for Edgar. He didn't fear his punches, even though he was getting perhaps out-punched in terms of numbers. Nothing Frankie Edgar was doing, because of this footwork that he's got, allowed him to bed down to have any consequential power to Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera, therefore, grew in confidence that he couldn't be hurt. He was only getting taken down and maneuvered on a little bit on the grappling. He decided to go with all abandonment in the final round and was just stalking Edgar, making him more and more uncomfortable, threw up down the centre line with that teep that landed peach right on his jaw and knocked him out. He was complaining. I think he was unsure what had come down on the back of his head. I think he got slight impact on the head maybe as it went down. Not too sure what he was complaining about, but I felt he felt that he got hit unjustly on the ground and it was an unfair stoppage in the heat of the moment. But it was a great fight, great performance by Frankie Edgar, but it just didn't go his way, unfortunately. Look, MMA, so many ways to win, therefore so many ways to lose.
Indeed. And this next fight, I really wish we had more time to discuss it, because I thought Zhang Weili won. Rose Namajunas won by a split decision. I had Zhang winning this. I just think, I think it is, mate. I thought the fourth and particularly the 5th round, and Zhang Weili's demeanor and the way she fought that latter round, I think that really had a big influence on the outcome of the fight, because I thought for the first 3 rounds, I thought she was really impressive.
I don't know. I think Rose was taking center stage in terms of making Weili go backwards. Weili was doing some good counter striking, targeting Rose's leg, and looked like it could become consequential, although it wasn't ultimately. Weili was, sometimes getting taken down as well. I never thought that, because Wiley's so physically more stronger in stature than Rose is. Rose is very, very lean and not particularly muscled, but her technique has improved so much. And I think it was really, really close. I think it was 2 for 2 going into the last round, but Rose's choice of takedown was very, very good. And this is the thing with Rose, she's very, very creative in the way that she makes great decisions. That was a great decision of a takedown, because they're both physically tired. It's the latter part of the last round of a 5-round fight, and she chose to do a shoot-in where you trip in behind the ankle. So if that type of takedown succeeds, it was done effortlessly, and it's pretty hard to balls it up. It's not like someone can sprawl out of it. All they can do is footwork out of it. Weili didn't footwork out of it because she was trying to be counter fighter. So this was a superb choice for Rose. Whether she chose to do it tactically and strategically, no one will ever know unless you ask her that specific question. I feel that it was. I think she's an absolute genius, and I think she knew that Weili was bedding down on her shots there, for her feet were going to be where they were going to be, and she could trip on it leg on leg to get that takedown, to finalize and get that final nod on the judge's decision. I felt like she won it 3 rounds to 2.
You're wrong. And then the main event and the last fight for us to talk about is Camara. Usman defeated Colby Covington. I'll leave this one to you, mate.
Just very quickly. Usman did absolutely amazing. His boxing's just come on leaps and bounds. It really has in the last sort of handful of fights that he's had. Predominantly known as someone who's just a wrestler, but his striking is really the key to his successes now. Covington did try to do a couple of takedowns, was failing. The thing that Covington did wrong was when he did have Usman mildly hurt, where he could actually build on something positive, he chose to shoot in, lost trajectory on anything positive that he had, kind of just threw away an opportunity to try to get back on some forward footing regards to striking. Look, Covington's top tier, world class. Without a doubt, he's ranked number 2 or 3 in that division. I say that because there's, one of our other favourites that are in that division, I think quite possibly would beat him. But Usman, just the better fighter. What can you say? There was talks as well in the press conference, wasn't there, about Usman saying that he's going to get out at the right time. I absolutely think he should. He ain't got nothing to prove in this division. I think that he's kind of fought all the best there is. He's proved he's the best. And if he got out now, I would not disrespect him for that. Absolutely incredible fighter, and probably one of the most dominant ones in any of those weight divisions.
Yeah, I think the one fight I want to see from him is the Leon Edwards fight, but I think there's a bit.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. I would argue that that's why I said 2 or 3 with Covington, because I would argue that our man is above him in that ranking.
Yes, I think so. But hopefully they'll sort that out. Guys, girls, thank you ever so much for watching, for joining us. Massive thank you to Richard Mearns for joining us. Massive thank you as ever for our boxing pundit Ben Doughty for joining us. And of course, Danny, a big thank you to you, my friend. I apologize that we've had to kind of rush towards the end, just with the 2 guests and then loads of fights to talk about. We've kind of flown through everything, but such is life. I've got to go. I appreciate you all. And we'll be back next week. I'll be back tomorrow evening. Join me at 7:30 tomorrow night. But until then, we bid you farewell. Cheers.